Hey guys, it's BlockchainBrad speaking, and today, as you can see my face rather than just hear me, and I've managed to find my children's green screen, and I've just thrown it up against the wall. So guys, thanks so much for listening to my podcast in the last few weeks. I've had a lot of fun researching whenever I can between work and play and with family. But basically guys, today what I wanted to do is talk to you a bit about Neo. You know, I'm a huge fan of Neo. If you've been listening, I like to do a lot of research and I like to go deep into the technology. So I wanted to do a very brief overview of the protocols today. So I'm going to do my very best to make it a short and sweet video just as a trial run. But guys, the main reason for this is to talk about what's known as the distributed Byzantine fault tolerance. Now that's a mouthful, I know, but essentially that is one of the best protocols that exist out there, and it's certainly likened to what I regard as the third generation of blockchain protocols. So what I mean by that is that traditionally, as I've mentioned in previous podcasts, guys, the first wave of blockchain obviously led by, in my opinion, by Craig, or some would argue it's Satoshi. But basically that was a generation 1 blockchain, and it was underpinned by a decentralized, completely decentralized protocol. It allowed for peer-to-peer transaction and it disintermediated communication. So it had no longer had any kind of hub, and it had no central mechanism built into the mode of communication and store of value. So that led the way for a second generation, and we all know that's Ethereum and similar blockchain technologies, whereby there was a capacity for blockchains to allow for specific smart contracts, or for business essentially, to append onto the system in a decentralized way. So that was really great, and Vitalik is one of the key researchers and developers of that kind of generation, of that second generation technology. But now we're facing something really exciting, and in the generation 3 space, what we're seeing is a bifurcation of the blockchain industry. So let me just explain, and I'll explain why I want to talk about Neo in that context. Right now we have a situation where the generation 3 is bifurcating into a permissionless and a permissioned environment. And it's always been predominantly permissionless until now, but what's happening is that there are major corporations and major industries and and nations actually now trying to forge a place and a space within the context of the technology and what it can do. So to do that, many of them are trying to privatize and close off their own, the blockchain itself, to suit their ends. So whether it be a specific business, a bank, or whether it be a governmental initiative, many are trying to find a way to condition that and establish what's known as a hub. So in that sense, ironically and paradoxically, they are trying to centralize a decentralized system. And obviously from the outset, that was never the intention, but because enterprise is so powerful, and we've seen historically that there's a propensity for things to centralize, we need to look at the way in which the internet was forged, and then the way in which it moved away from its decentralized initiative to what it is now. And as you guys know, through examples like Google and Amazon, Yahoo, all of those different services, much of the information and data has to filter through those hubs. And that, in my opinion, is what we're seeing in a transition right now with the blockchain industry. So in my opinion, it's really important we don't ignore that. We learn from that, and we see how our investments can be best situated in this climate, in this bifurcated situation. What was interesting today is a colleague of mine, or as a YouTube communicator on my YouTube channel, he wrote a really great piece, and I was encouraged enough from that to go and respond to it. And he was making the argument that he felt that the permissioned and trusted blockchains are likely to dissipate and will be a thing of the past. Again, I'm no expert in this field, but my assumption is that won't be the case. While ever there's enterprise, they're always going to try and protect their interests. However, getting back to Neo, the reason why Neo is unique is because they support both the permissioned and the permissionless environment. They have not a bifurcated or a separate structure in their design. What they do have is two entities within a larger ecosystem that you don't call Neo. It doesn't really have a name. You'd have to ask Da Hongfei, the CEO of Neo, what they might call that. But essentially, Da Hongfei, who is the CEO of Neo, he also represents a private enterprise blockchain called Onchain. And they are the permissioned counterpart of Neo. But in terms of understanding the importance of Onchain, we can't underestimate again the importance of the enterprise and governmental connection, like in places like China for a start. Obviously, there are many other countries following suit. Certainly Canada's doing that. There's no question that South Korea is doing it, and also in the US. But what is unique so far in my research with Neo is that they've already built these two separate entities, but have a capacity via a cross-chain protocol called NeoX to become conversant at some point. So given that, guys, I wanted to just impress upon you the importance of A, the permissionless blockchain and decentralized space, B, the importance of some sort of mechanism within a larger ecosystem to have access to some kind of permission and trusted environment, and C, something that allows for the public blockchain to interact in some way with the private sector, whether that be banks, whether that be security firms, whether that be hospitals, whether that be universities. It's going to be fundamental for any robust ecosystem to be able to transact and to be able to interact with real-world applications and real-world blockchains. And in my opinion, having a pseudo or a quasi-hub built within any kind of major blockchain is going to be essential for its mass adoption. And so that's my take on that, guys. Again, the protocol is, I've studied a few others in terms of other blockchains that are making significant headway. One of them is called Icon, and it has a very, very similar protocol. It's known as it's based on loop chain, but it has a loop fault tolerance. And when I studied it, it was very similar to Neo's underpinning protocol. Now, Onchain, as I've mentioned previously, it has a very similar protocol in its permission structure, and that's why, again, it's piqued my interest, because Hyperledger, which is a competitor to Onchain, they previously had some sort of interconnection with Onchain, whereby there were clearly conversations and had between these two, so much so that Onchain is now a member of the Hyperledger team via core membership, but also their protocols are very similar. And I even found some research to suggest that the designer or the programmer for Hyperledger and IBM at the time, Marko Vukolik, actually was able to have dialogue with the Onchain team as they were developing their initial protocols. So guys, that's quite significant, because here you have the underpinnings of a permissioned and trusted protocol design that's now utilized within a public blockchain space that we call Neo. Not many are currently doing that. Certainly the majority are based on what we call a proof of work system, which again harps back to more of the raw originators of the blockchain itself, which had a very different precept, very different aim from the outset. We've now moved more away from the egalitarian structures to one of enterprise. And whilst we may not be a fan of that premise and that the intentions of businesses to utilize blockchain in this way, essentially in terms of investment, that's certainly the trajectory I see blockchain moving. So guys, that's it from me. I wanted to just briefly talk about protocols in the context of Neo. And until next time, guys, thank you so much for listening to my conversation, listening to my podcast. I feel so privileged to be part of the team, and I look forward to communicating with you in the future. Don't forget, guys, there's a bell up there, and if you want to just ring that, you'll get some notifications of other videos coming up. And if you like what you see, certainly let me know with some feedback or with a like, because I don't monetize the videos. They're entirely for, a bit like the original blockchain, they are open source, they are the way it should be. It's simply designed to open up streams of communication. So thanks again, and I'll talk to you soon.